Hello guys, welcome back to our channel. We're so excited to have you again. The NLC, after a meeting with the federal government, has decided to call off the strike, and they have reached a consensus, and there's a communique which will reveal the resolution and what the two parties have agreed upon. So we're going to be looking at that in a jiffy. So which means that everyone just keep going to work, and possibly when it gets to the timeline and the government have not done what they're supposed to do, it therefore means that the strike will continue. But right now the strike has been called off. But first of all, it's important that we don't just conclude. Let's look at what the resolution was that averted the strike action. And the news having that the nationwide strike by organized labor scheduled to commence today will not happen, as the union and the federal government reached an agreement this morning on the contentious issues over the deregulation of the downstream sector of the oil industry and electricity, which led to a rise in petrol price and electricity tariff. The meeting of the disputants, which was adjourned last Thursday till today, was however rescheduled for yesterday in a desperate bid to reach an agreement in order to avert the strike. Yesterday's meeting among the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC Trade Union Congress, TUC, and the federal government agreed on a 2-week thought for the rejig of the implementation of the policy on deregulation. Specifically, measures to alleviate the impact of the deregulation of the downstream sector of the oil industry was agreed upon, while the federal government committed to a 2-week suspension of the implementation of the electricity sector cost reflective tariff, which was into effect on September 1st. Among the agreement reached after several hours of talk, which ended in the wee hour of today, were palliative measures to cushion effect of the deregulation of the downstream sector, the timeline for revamping of refineries, suspension of newly introduced reflective cost regime in the electricity tariff. In a communique signed by the federal government side and labor representative, it was agreed that based on the agreement that the strike and protest earlier scheduled for today be postponed. Consequently, the NLC and TUC agreed to suspend the planned industrial action. Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Ngige, who read the communique, said. The communique said that after exhaustive deliberation on the issue raised by labor centers, the federal government stated, and I quote, said that it has fashioned out palliatives that will ameliorate the suffering that Nigerian workers may experience as a result of the cost-reflective electricity tariff adjustment and deregulation of the downstream sector of the petroleum industry. The palliative will be in the area of transport, power, housing, agriculture, and humanitarian support. It said after negotiation on various issues raised by all parties, the following resolutions were reached and mutually adopted. On electricity tariff, the party agreed to set up a technical committee comprising ministries, department, agencies, MDCAs, NLC, and third, which will work for a duration of 2 weeks, effective Monday, 28 September 2020. The committee is to examine the justification for the new policy in view of the need for the validation of the basis for the new cost reflective tariff as a result of the conflicting informations from the field, which appears different from the data presented to justify the new policy by NERC, and metering deployment challenges as well as a timeline for massive rollout. Member of the technical committee are Minister of State Labour and Employment as Chairman Mr. Festus Kiyamo, Minister of State Power Mr. Godwin Jediagba, Chairman National Electricity Regulatory Commission Professor James Momo, Special Assistant to the President on Infrastructure Mr. Ahmed Zakari, as Secretary Dr. Moho NLC Mr. John Ajero, NLC Mr. Chris Okonkwo, TUC, and a representative of DISCO. The theme of reference include examining the justification for the new policy on cost-reflective electricity tariff adjustment to look at the different electricity distribution company, DISCO, and their different electricity tariff vis-a-vis NERC order and mandate, examine and advise the government on the issues that have hindered the deployment of the 6 million meters and look into NERC's act under review with a view or to expanding its representation to various organized labor. The technical subcommittee is to submit its report within 2 weeks. During the 2 weeks, the DISCO shall suspend the application of the cost-reflective electricity tariff adjustment. The meeting also resolved that the following issues of concern to labor should be treated as stand-alone items: 40% stake of government in the DISCO and the stake of workers to be reflected in the composition of the DISCO's board, an all-inclusive and independent review of the power sector operation as provided in the privatization MOU to be undertaken before the end of 2020 with labor representative. That going forward, the Morabon National Labor Advisory Council be inaugurated before the end of 2020 to institutionalize the process of tripartite and social dialogue and on socio-economic and major labor matters to forestall any crisis. On the downstream sector of deregulation, the communique said all parties agreed on the urgency for increasing the local refinery capacity of the nation to reduce the overdependence on the importation of petroleum products to ensure energy security, reduce the cost of finished product, increase employment and business opportunity for Nigerians. According to the communique, to address number one above, NNPC is to expedite the rehabilitation of the nation's 4 refineries located in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna, and to achieve 50% completion for Port Harcourt by December 2021, while timeline and delivery for Warri and Kaduna will be established by the Inclusive Steering Committee. To ensure commitment and transparency to the processes and timeline of the rehabilitation exercise, the management of NNPC has offered to integrate the national leadership of the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, and Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association, PENGASN, into the steering committee already established by the corporation. A validation team comprising the representative of the NNPC, Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, NUPENG, and PENGASN will be established to monitor the process of the rehabilitation of the refinery and the pipeline stroke strategic depot network and advise the steering committee periodically. It said that the post-rehabilitation NNPC shall involve the PENGASN and NUPENG in the process of establishing the operational model of the nation's refinery. The federal government also said that it will facilitate the delivery of licensed modular and regular refinery, the involvement of upstream companies in the petroleum refinery, and establishing a framework for financing in the downstream refinery. NSPC is to expedite work on the operate and transfer framework for the nation pipeline and strategic depot network for efficient transportation and distribution of petroleum products to match the delivery timeline of the refineries as agreed. It also added that the federal government and its agency are to ensure delivery of 1 million LPG auto gas conversion kit, storage skid, and dispensing unit under the Nigerian gas expansion program by December 2021 to enable the delivery of cheaper transportation and fuel power. It said a governance structure that would include representative of organized labor shall be established for a timely delivery. A lot has been said, and right now, what it boils around with is The fact that the federal government has agreed to do something to ensure that there is a reduction in the price of fuel in the next 2 weeks. And they have also promised Nigerians that the issue of tariff they are going to spend 2 weeks to look into the issue of electricity tariff increase, see how they can deal with it. And within these 2 weeks, that Disco, which is the main body or the main company managing power for Nigeria, will have to suspend the increase in electricity tariff. And on that grounds, Nigerians are expected to go back to office and start their work. So, looking at all of these things that have been presented, do you think it's good enough? Let's go to our